Hellmaster EX. This award-winning system features the first single-engine joystick with digital electric steering and new autopilot capability. See Hellmaster EX in action at a Yamaha Outboard dealer or visit YamahaOutboards.com.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
It's Thursday, August 15th, 2024. This week's New Jersey, Delaware regional video fishing forecast from the Fisherman Magazine. I'm Jim Hutchinson, and today we kick things off essentially the same way that we did last week, and that's by looking at the tropical weather systems. Last week it was Debbie. This week we return to Mike's weather page, spaghettimodels.com, to track another one that's coming up on us this week. The reason, of course, is the season. Now, first I would tell you, pretty phenomenal offshore bite of late. Bluefin in the shipping lanes, the offshore grounds, you're hearing those screaming drags and reels singing. But we are dealing with a tropical kind of dealio here in these waning days of summer, at least the second half. We're rapidly approaching the second half of August. Now, after Debbie's glancing blow last week, which we now look at a tropical storm Ernesto, which actually became a hurricane on the model sometime on Wednesday. But by all accounts, the midweek models have this system staying a good distance east from shore. But it's already showing to be a bit of a weather window threat for the weekend, especially when we look in terms of offshore fishing from the Hudson Canyon to the Baltimore. Truth be told, at this very moment, as I sit here in front of you, all I can think about is throwing poppers on the stern of Captain Alan Lee's Mushin out of point, because I've got a trip planned for Friday. Alan has been doing pretty well through the last few days. Top water bite on yellowfin tuna. I was heading out with George Schauer, our Pocono outdoors guy, as well as Captain Dave and Captain Nick DeGennaro. So my fingers are crossed, but things, well, they do start to look sporty in terms of wave heights out east as we head into Saturday and Sunday. That's offshore, like I said. Now, inshore, what else is new? A little north in the forecast on Thursday the 15th, and then it's back to that southerly assault. The inshore just off the beaches of New Jersey, Delmarva. Be careful if you do plan on heading off the beaches in this weekend ahead, especially we're looking at a little bit of the south, and you will have a bit of a swell, an impressive swell coming courtesy of Ernesto. And except for that south wind, I'm sure surfers are chomping at the bit, catch a couple of waves in this weekend ahead. Now, I spoke rather optimistically in last Thursday's video report. I felt that this week was going to be a good one after the passing of Debbie. And Debbie passed through here really quickly. Saturday turned into a beautiful day, and Sunday was just packed. It was a mob scene. But west winds through Monday morning, yeah, it had me anxious to get out on Monday. My son was in town. He was working. My wife was working. My son's girlfriend, Jess, said, hey, I'd like to go fishing. And I said, I got to keep peace in the family. I said, let's go. But again, all we found were shorts in the upper Barnegat Bay in the first hour and a half or so. And then I don't know where it came from because it wasn't in the weather forecast for Monday. But the south winds came up. They came up hard. They were honking, made conditions rather difficult. Now, I would say this. In terms of working the rivers, the inlets, the back bays, water temperatures warm, incoming water temperatures cool, but make them short drifts to find where the fish are sitting, where they're eating, and when exactly eating, because sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off. But my buddy Bob, my neighbor Bob, he was fishing nearby us, and he was doing short drifts. I picked up and moved, try to find another spot. Then we called it a day after that brutal south, but he stuck it out. Short drifts, finally found out where those fish were sitting. He ended up 3 keepers, 15 throwbacks. And I think he was using some live killies. There's plenty of bunker now, peanut bunker. I'm seeing those throughout the creeks. So if you do have a live well on board, I was talking to Nick Cicero about this last week. You know, yeah, the fish bites work, the bait, the American bait works are working. The gulp, of course, ubiquitous for fluke fishing. But as Nick said, if you've got that live well on board, make sure you load it up with peanut bunker, because sometimes they want the meat, and that peanut bunker will turn them on this time of year. Colleen Boyle let me know that she and Andy and their border collie Taz had a couple of keepers on the Raritan Bay earlier this week, up to 22.5 inches. That's good news. Still, some of the guys I'm talking to in the Raritan Bay said it's picky at best. But as we get that south wind and a couple of swells coming up this weekend, in many places in the Raritan, you can find yourself in lee of the wind. Of course, the tighter you get to the Raritan Bay shore, but there are places to duck out of that wind to try to find yourself some of the areas where you can drift comfortably for fluke. I saw Captain Gene Nigro earlier this week. He used to run the Phantom out of Highlands, New Jersey. I saw him at an IGFA kids event. He says folks on the Navesink now are seeing small cobia up that way, which is pretty amazing that you're finding that that particular fishery inside at this point. But the Raritan Bay, of course, is like Disney World compared to everything else. It just attracts so many different fish species. And we are getting into that time of year where folks are going to be running and gunning looking for false albacore blowing up. And of course, we've got the inshore bluefin. They're in tight as well. In our weekly reports posted at thefisherman.com this past Monday, Nick at Bullet Hole Annex, for example, he said better size fluke were reported last week in the northern stretch despite the high ratios of shorts to keepers. He did say blue fishing was pretty good on the North Jersey grounds, some mackerel, bonita, and Spanish mackerel as well being reported. Out of Shark River, the Miss Belmar Princess found the blues over the weekend. High hook had around 21 bluefish from 3 to 8 pounds caught on the jig. They had some keeper sea bass and blackfish as well. Virtual headboat smorgasbord, if you will. Belmar and Neptune boats, of course, are gunning for fluke, and they're still finding ling as well. But this is certainly the time of year we get into mid to late August where you start looking at some of those, that sticky stuff, the rattlesnake, for example, and some of the reef site seagirt, for example, for some of those doormat fluke. Along the central Jersey coast on Tuesday, the Jamaica 2 out of Brielle saw anglers picking away at the keepers out front with Al Nichols taking over the lead in the August monthly pool at 7 pounds. I grabbed this photo off of Facebook. I don't even know if that's Al's 7-pounder. But I saw the photos from earlier in the week on that trip. They had 5s and 6s all the way up to 7 pounds. So there were some good-looking fish caught on the Jamaica 2 this week. We go down to LBI, Barnegat Inlet. Tommy and crew at Surf City Bait and Tackle said they're stocking green crabs and sand fleas. For those of you looking to get out on the South Jetty rocks looking for some blackfish, you've got that one blackfish limit. You might also get some sheep's head out there. Bloodworms are working on the front beaches. If you're looking to load up on some of those kingfish, there are a few triggerfish around the jetty rocks as well, according to Tommy at Surf City. I did bump into a young man at that IGFA event earlier this week, a hardcore Central Jersey rock hopper. He showed me a photo of a juvenile Goliath grouper he caught locally within the last 2 weeks. So again, when you're fishing in the brine in the summertime, you never know what you're going to stumble into when you put a hook in the water. This young man, and the hook that he put in was a paddle tail. I thought it was a gag grouper, but Nick DeGennaro, who works now for the IGFA, has got a marine sciences degree out there. He said, no, that kid's right. A juvenile Goliath grouper. Pretty cool stuff. I spoke with Captain Joe Rizzo earlier this week. He runs a charter on Barnegat Bay out of Waretown. He expects the blow fishing to heat up. We are commiserating about the terrible fluke season that we're all having from Sandy Hook down to Delaware Bay. It's just been miserable for a lot of folks. He's canceled a bunch of trips because of problems there. But Joe said typically he's got August 15th, 16th circled as the time when the blowfish action really gets hot on the Barnegat Bay. So we are coming into that time of year where you're setting up in a quiet hole with a chum pot, frozen clam chum, some high-low rigs where you can get a whole potpourri of fish, some puppy drum, but especially those blowfish, which everybody just loves to load up on this time of year. Dropping tog jigs down with greenies from the South Jetty at LBI all the way down to all the jetties and the piers in Atlantic, all the way down into Cape May County as well. And of course down at the icebreakers on the Delaware Bay for folks heading out of Lewis as well. Noel at One Stop Bait and Tackle in Atlantic City, he said the youngsters are getting into the game as much as possible before that back to school time comes up. He said the tog fishing on the rocks, bulkheads, and local piers is producing pretty well down there. And again, when you're putting out some of those green crabs or fiddler crabs or Asian crabs or even just the sand crabs you collect on the beach, you never know. You could also end up with a sheep's head as well. We head down into Cape May County And Deb and crew at Grassy Sound Marina said it's been an excellent week there this week. Drew here from Malvern, PA, had 5 keeper fluke on the boat during a weekday trip. Out back, including this one, a 7-pounder on live minnows. Again, as I mentioned in my own personal tale of woe at the beginning of this week's video, sometimes you just got to stick and move. You got to work it out. You got to figure out where those fish are laying. And if you're getting nothing but shorts, if you're going for a period of time where there's nothing and then you're getting nothing but shorts, I got to go find bigger fish. No, work it out. A lot of times maybe those smaller fish are a little bit more aggressive than the big fish, but they do seem like they're turning on at a particular stage of the tide. And I'll tell you, if a friend tells you they turned on at the top of the tide or they turned on just 2 hours before the ebb, take that to heart. You know, keep that in mind. Make a mental note for your own planning purposes the next time you head out. To help you with those plans, Jenni is back with round 2 of her Q&A session, answering the questions that you posed on our recent YouTube video releases. Let's see if she answers my question about the exact vicinity on where she catches striped bass at night when I'm typically sleeping. I doubt it. Maybe that's going to be open boat round 3. Give us your questions and answers, Jenni.
Hey everyone, we're back with the fireplace in the background, so you already know your burning questions are going to be answered now. So this is part 2, and we're going to start off with a question from Rob Brown 22261. And Rob has a question about weak fish on the island. Were there more weak fish in this spring's reports than usual, and do you think they're making a comeback? My favorite word is comeback in fishing industry. Fish are making a comeback, they're thriving, populations are going up. Wouldn't you like to see that for a majority of the species that you target? Recently, we've seen a lot of weak fish being caught throughout New Jersey and New York, especially in the bays, all across the region. Estuaries, bays, the rivers, the canals, everything. Lots of anglers reported fish between 6 to 12 pounds being caught, and I even had a run-in with some weak fish that I don't want to remember this story because it's traumatizing, because I've never successfully landed a weak fish the spots I've been fishing because it's a little tricky. But there have been some weak fish around, and if I close my eyes, I can see the weak fish that, you know, they get the name weak fish so that they got weak jaws. I can see the weak fish that it's hooked, popped out of its mouth just as I was about to flip it. But I don't want to think about that. I do want to think about how the fact that they're becoming more, you know, more as a bycatch. There's more around, which is great. And the one big thing where, like for Rob, he wants the species to come back. A big thing that you want to make it like your mantra is be the change that you want to see. That's my favorite quote. Be the change that you want to see. If you want to see a certain species bounce back, advocate for them. So what does that mean for like the weak fish or other species? It means that you have to conserve wildlife. You can donate to these foundations that protect the areas that these fish spawn in or they thrive in, like the estuaries and the back bays and everything like that. You can teach others about the species, like tell your local fishing buddies about them and talk about how the population is practically killed off and how it's somewhat making a comeback, more noticeable fish being caught. Like, hey, this is the start of something good, let's keep it happening. What are we doing now that is making the population bounce back, and let's keep doing it so they really bounce back. And a big thing, even like better yet, if you can get your hands on them, which you can through Gray Fish Tag or some of the fishing clubs, is tag the species. You can catch a weak fish, you can tag it real quick, get measurements, release it, and you can track to see where that fish goes so you know, hey, they're going back here to spawn, like this one was caught here, it traveled this far. You can see the distance that they take to live and thrive in an environment that's now theirs. So be the change that you want to see. So thank you, Rob, for that question. Now, this next one, this is in fact not me using this username, but it is a great one. Total Noob Fishing 1753. And Total Noob asks, what are your favorite gulp collars and gulp bodies that you use when targeting fluke? So I'm very stubborn, like many other anglers. When I get a collar that works, I stick with it. So a lot of the times I'm not even using Gulp. I use other manufacturers such as American Bait Works, Fish Bites, and Q8. They provide the same area rug feet sweeping doormat slaying colors for you anglers to use out there, and those work best for me. So when I'm fluking off the surf, I use a 4-inch pink glow or white glow bait. Sometimes I'll use the shrimp shape, I'll use a jerk shad or a mullet. It all depends on where I'm fishing to better match the bait. If I'm fishing not with a sinker, like the bucktail teaser rig, sometimes you take the bucktail off and put a sinker on. But if I'm not, I'll use either a bucktail or a naked jig head. Some work better than others with the presentation. Like on a shrimp, I would use a naked jig head compared to a bucktail because you can see that profile better. So when I fluke off the boat, I strictly use a bucktail teaser rig. And I'll use a 6-inch grub or a nemesis, depending on where I'm fishing, and if there's sea bass around, I do not want them destroying a nemesis because those are they're a great bait to use and they're kind of expensive. But that goes on my bottom bucktail. And on the teaser, I will use like a 5-inch grub in that same pink glow or white glow colors. Sometimes I get to the point where I'm legit at the bottom of the barrel, I have no more Gulp left in my container, or those colors that I like to use, I'll switch to a funky color because you don't know, sometimes that finicky bite will turn off and they'll be crushing it on that one color that no one uses that you happen to have left over from a trip from 3 years ago that you bought because you thought it was pretty. That's me. I like the glittery paint, so I'll buy it, but then I never use it. But there have been trips where I've used the leftovers and they've worked. So it's really all about the more you go, the more you know. So certain colors work in certain areas. If it's dirty water, you use chartreuse, stuff like that. If it's deeper waters, you can use glow because it glows and they see that and they're attracted to it. So that is the end of the part 2. We're gonna do one final one next week and we're gonna get right through it and your questions will be answered. So stay tuned and I'll see you guys next week.
Now is the best time to buy a boat at the Jersey Shore Boat Sale and Expo. Fishing boats for inland and offshore. Tons of center consoles. September 27th through 29th, Shoretown Ballpark, home of the Jersey Shore Blue Claws. Tickets at jerseyboatexpo.com.
Life is better with a boat.
Andy at Riptide Bait and Tackle in Brigantine said this week that Mac and crew had some fun with tuna and mahi. Andy reminds us that if you're heading offshore, you want to load up sterling tackle, magic tail bars, any color size Joe shoots and the who heads. Don't forget the Ronzis. Even on the dead stick, they've been resulting in some good bluefin catches closer to the bottom, that just kind of natural up and down. It's got to look like mackerel or ling or whatever else those bluefin are feeding on. Andy also reminds us ballyhoo butterfish and sardines. And I bring that up because it's the crew of Jersey Nuts Sport Fishing, which runs out of Atlantic City and also Point. They reported this week some epic troll and chunking this week on the yellowfin. Captain Cody said yellowfin have started feeding on the chunk, reporting that their 53 stuffed the boat in just 3 hours of fishing earlier this week. Good to know on those yellowfin grounds. Nothing like a little bit of fresh caught sushi, sashimi, maybe a little olive oil and sesame oil, and then coat those thick cut yellowfin or bluefin steaks with, I like the everything but the bagel seasoning. And then it's 30 seconds on a side out on the grill outside, nice and hot. Now, it's another one, another easy menu if you're getting a lot of tuna, if you're lucky enough. The poke bowl is a very simple tuna dish. You can make it home with fresh yellowfin or bluefin. You don't have to put everything in the world in there like you might get at a seafood restaurant. But it starts with sushi rice, cooked and ready to prep. That's in less than 30 minutes. I put the smaller pieces of the trimmed tuna while I'm cutting up a loin, and the smaller, narrower piece, I'll cut that into little pieces that are going to go in the poke bowl and save the other big steaks for the grill. Maybe you can add some, what I do is on that sushi rice with the tuna, I'll add some fresh shishito peppers, sliced nice and thin from the garden, maybe some mango salsa, fresh mango salsa, spicy mayo, ginger, wasabi. You can add scallion and other vegetables based on what you like, but a poke bowl, when you look at it at a restaurant, looks really difficult to make, but it's really easy. I mean, it's 30 minutes or less. Once the rice is cooked, that takes about 20 minutes or so. You can do your prep. Takes you another 10 minutes to get it all ready to go, and then you're taking a picture to share with all your friends. And again, like I said, I'm hoping to sneak out aboard Mushin this Friday before Ernesto whips things up over the weekend. Looking forward to doing a little offshore adventure with this guy from out west. It's George Shower, our Pocono outdoors guy.
Well, thanks, Jim. Looks like the lake, streams, and rivers are starting to get back to normal somewhat after the flooding as Tropical Storm Debbie made her way through. We certainly have our thoughts and prayers for all the people that were negatively impacted by that storm. But you can see things are starting to get back to normal. Water levels are back down. Delaware River, Susquehanna River, still a little bit iffy, but I think we're going to have to be in a much better position this coming weekend if we try to get out on them. One thing it did leave us was much cooler temperatures. The Delaware River was up around 83 degrees about 2 weeks ago. It was 69 when I checked it this morning, right before this report. So definitely some improving conditions there. Taking a look at what's happening with the fishing, you know, I had my friend Eric Gustav. He was out just before Debbie rolled through, and he was starting to get on some brown trout. So that time of year is starting to come back into play. You know, the middle of summer, we try to stay away from those trout because they are very sensitive if you want to release them. But after the storm, he also got into some bass up here in Pike County. So the fishing is starting to turn back on. On the bigger lakes like Wallenpaupack and Beltsville, stripers are back on the move. You know, that cooler temperature is going to turn that bite back on. Will Grouper here managed to get himself one true strange striper and two hybrids, or those wipers as they call them. So the bite is definitely on there in Wallenpaupack. Also, Paul Seward down there in South Jersey, well, he was getting that crappie bite turned on as well. So some good fishing this weekend, guys. I think we'll have a little bit of rain, so it might be soggy, but nothing like it was the past weekend. So hopefully conditions improve. You get out and get on them. But from Pennsylvania, I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors guy.
In this week's digital edition of the Fisherman Magazine, New Jersey, Delaware Bay, 4 additional feature articles to help you in your weekend endeavors. Includes tips on becoming a better surfcaster, headboat jigging tactics from Captain Tom McDalsky, might be something you want to use this weekend if you're going out headboat fishing for those blues out of Belmar or looking for a black sea bass. A freshwater focus on fishing ahead of some of those late summer cold fronts. And there's a cool little recipe in there from Anthony Campbell to make use of all that terrific ling that we've been catching along the Jersey coast this week. Love fish tacos with Spanish mackerel, ling, fluke, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. They might like, well, honestly, ling, they fight like a wet towel. But fresh ling tacos are nothing to sneeze at. Remember, for full digital weekly access to the Fisherman Magazine at thefisherman.com, it's $29.95 for the year. You get 26 digital weekly editions from April through November. You get those 12 monthly issues delivered to your home, and you get full digital access to everything at thefisherman.com, because as it stands right now, if you're not a paid member, you're going to visit like 3 or 4 pages, and then a window comes smacking down on your fingers. So get in there, get it all, get the hot spots, the news, the information, and of course, you are automatically entered into the Dreamboat Fishing Challenge when you become a paid member of the Fisherman. For a quick look at the latest leaderboard, let's head back to our virtual studios with production maven Tim C. Smith.
We had no Dreamboat entries this week. Mother Nature won out again with the passing of Debbie. The leaderboard still stands at Scott Waterman with 17, Brian Zembreski at 13, Anthony Savino tied with Brian at 13. Plenty of time to enter your fish to win that Steigercraft powered by Yamaha and other great prizes. But you must be a Fisherman subscriber to enter. We can't stress enough that those weigh-in forms must be completely filled out. Please make sure before you leave the weigh station to look over that form and make sure it's correct. For all the details and how to enter, visit thefisherman.com/contests. And now for the Kayak Clash. We had one new entry in the Kayak Clash this week, and it was Todd Trezone with a 49-inch bass. Todd is now in third place with 6 points, knocking out Mike Radzuzowinski, whose name I could never pronounce properly. So the standings look like this. Todd Trezone in third place, Bob Wagner holding second, and Justin Oser is still holding on to first place. To be part of the Coastal Kayak Clash and for your chance to win the Old Town Sportsman PDL 120, fully outfitted by YakAttack.com and other great prizes, you must be a Fisherman subscriber. For all the details and how to enter, visit thefisherman.com/contests.
Hey, are you in the market for a new or pre-owned boat? Good used boat is very difficult to find in this market, believe it or not. But here's a tip and an idea from some friends in Manahawkin about how you might be able to find exactly what you're looking for.
Fishing and family fun, all in one exciting previously owned 2022 Sea Pro 259 DLX in like new condition with many extras. This one-owner Sea Pro shows pride of ownership and is ready for the water. Call Ted at Causeway Marine at 609-597-3488. This 24 Legacy Nordic Star Leftover is powered by a Yamaha 250 4-stroke. It combines sleek looks, incredible fishing performance, and family-friendly comfort. Call Anthony at Tom's River Marine and Motorsports, 732-929-8168.
A look at the calendar of events from the August edition of the Fisherman Magazine showcases a couple of fluke tournaments coming up this weekend at the Jersey Shore. You've got the second annual Arrowhead Fluke Tournament presented by the Jersey Coast Shark Anglers. That's Saturday, August 17th. The captain's meeting is on Friday at club headquarters. That's on Herbertsville Road in Brick. The weigh-ins on Saturday will be at Captain Bill's from 3 to 5 p.m. If you want details on this tournament, go to jcsa.org, Jersey Coast Shark Anglers Association. Also on Saturday, the 17th, is the Ozarks 25th Annual Fluke Tournament Greater Saltwater Open. That captain's meeting is on Friday. The awards party will be on Sunday, the 18th. The tournament is on Saturday, the 17th. It benefits Heroes on the Water. Get all the details at ozarkgso.com. That's Ozark Greater Saltwater Open, ozarkgso.com. Again, you can find it all in here. Get all the contact information, the phone numbers, all the calendar listing for the entire month of August. Right now, I'm working on September, trying to find all of the events going on in September. So if you're running a tournament or you're running an event and you want to see it in the September edition, you got to get in touch with me as soon as possible. You can email me at jhutchinson@thefisherman.com. And of course, as always, in the August edition, in the July edition, and every edition, the upcoming September edition, all the information you need how to catch fish locally. Next week, of course, is the big Mid-Atlantic tournament out of Cape May. It used to be called the Mid-Atlantic 500,000, but because the payouts are now well into the millions now, well, they just call it the Mid-Atlantic. That runs from August 19th through the 23rd. The captain's meeting and registration is this Sunday, the 18th. It's down there at the Canyon Club in Cape May. There's another weigh-in and registration port in Ocean City, Maryland, of course. But if you're not in that event right now, it's the big money tournament. It's a huge event. Contact South Jersey Tournaments at 609-884-0177, or you can also visit southjerseytournaments.com. I might see you down there along the docks in Cape May. I'd love to run down one day to check out the weigh-ins. But really, what I'm hoping on Friday to see you someplace along the edge, east of Manasquan. My fingers are crossed because I've got a duty and a responsibility on Friday the 16th to bring tuna home for my wife who's celebrating her birthday on Saturday the 17th. Aren't I a good husband? Happy birthday, Michelle. I love you, darling. Catch 'em up. We'll see you again next week right here at thefisherman.com.